So welcome to the second event in this semester's A.K. Smith series, a reading by the Connecticut Circuit student poets. Please make sure any electronic devices on your person are switched off or otherwise silenced. Just to let you know, our next event after this will be on March 1st, and it will be the highly celebrated young novelist and short story writer from Chile, Alejandro Zambra, who'll be reading from his latest collection, My Documents. So March 1st, which is a Tuesday, 4:30, right here. So as some of you may know, each year the Connecticut Poetry Circuit selects 5 or 4 student poets from colleges across the state to participate in a series of readings in different campuses across Connecticut, usually ending at the Sunken Garden Poetry Festival, which happens at the Hillstead Museum in Farmington over the summer months. This is a program that's been hugely important to poetry, not just in Connecticut but nationally. It's produced figures like Chase Twitchell, who was actually a Trinity alum, and Ars Solis Germay, who attended Connecticut College and is now a national figure. Today we're joined by 4 poets, including our own Angela Pitsoulakis, a student very dear to me, somebody who marched into my office as a bright-eyed first year with her poem about a pickled egg that she wanted me to read. She also marched into Professor Rosen's office with the same poem. And she's kept coming back, even when I've told her to change things and to sort of to read this and read that. She's one of those wonderful students who absorbs everything and anything that you tell her and sort of finds a way to use it and use it productively. So she's been a real pleasure to have as a student for the last 4 years. We're also welcoming today Julia Bonadis of Manchester Community College, Benjamin Radcliffe of Middlesex Community College, and Valerie Zapata of University of Hartford. The poets are going to introduce each other, as is their tradition, and Angela will read last. Since he's reading first, I will introduce Benjamin, who has a fascinating bio. Benjamin Radcliffe is in his second year of studies at Middlesex Community College, where he is completing his associate's degree in liberal arts and sciences. He is currently applying to 4-year colleges, and he began his studies at Middlesex at the age of 14. He has an identical twin brother, Noah, with whom he shares an incredible acting and musical career. They've performed as the Radcliffe brothers at churches, coffee houses, bars, twice at the Capitol in Hartford and off-Broadway in downtown NYC, and at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts, in Lord of the Flies as adapted for the stage. He's also won a solo singing contest during a halftime show at Madison Square Gardens. He loves piano, singing, acting, photography, and writing, and at Middlesex he was inspired by the English and creative writing classes they offered, already having been an avid reader of just about anything. So please welcome to the stage, the microphone. We don't have a stage, microphone. Our first reader, Benjamin Radcliffe.
Hi. My name is Ben. I want to thank you all so much for having me here. It really is an honor. I mean, I'm saying things and you're listening to them. And there's so many of you. Kind of new to this. About poetry. If there's anything I know about it, besides like metaphor and assonance and crochet tetrameter and all that nonsense, it's that you can't have poems without people. It's people that write them, and it's people that read them, and people that inspire them. And I often find that the best poems I've written are ones that are inspired by people closest to me. So I'm going to start off with a poem from my mom and my dad, who I couldn't be here without, because I'm not old enough to drive. But you taught me that people don't eat turkey in Turkey. You always said that a standoff should not be reserved for the Mexicans. If it wasn't for you, I would know how to tip waiters at restaurants. Instead, I tell them, look both ways before you cross the street. Instead, I hold on to my money. Maybe that's a good thing. You always said, Build a man a fire and you warm him for a day. Light a man on fire and you warm him for a lifetime. And now I'm at a fork in the road, and I find your perennial advice comes back to me. If you see a fork in the road, take it. If you see a fork on the road, leave it be. You always tried to eat me in restaurants. You would spoon my shoulder and rub pepper on me. Love, who cares? I've yet to even put ice cubes in my milk. I still believe that 90% of gunshot wounds are purely psychological. I know Santa isn't real. You had taught me that much. But oh, how I would stay up late at night and listen for the Loch Ness Monster's lonely song. And Ma. Soft and taunted typing, like rain without romance, there you are, diligently, grudgingly working. I spent a while making this poem, without penchant for timely, aptly finishing. Because this poem, all about you, is like inclement weather. There are sometimes good days in a week that strike me. There are always bad days I'm used to quickly, sultrily remembering. So this poem is like a rule, to never forget, to love you always. I had a friend in grade school named Jaleel. I was probably in the 5th grade, and I had known him almost my whole life, and he died very suddenly, out of the blue, and this was my first experience with death. And I don't know if any of you have had a sudden experience with death like that. I mean, he was 13, 14 years old probably. Don't even know what took him. And still, I can't believe he's gone, but I felt like I had to remember him because he was so young and he never got to do the things he wanted to do. So this is for Jaleel, the boy I knew in elementary school. Hi, Jaleel. I'm thinking about you, and why I haven't before, and about things like that. That day in Washington Park, it was summer and about as hot as a dream about pavement. Smells like burnt crisping sulfur from the firecrackers they're setting off on the open red concrete basketball courts. It's about 8 p.m. and we're both nervous about the kids on the courts lighting crackers. And we were like brothers. We made that pact very early on by the spit in our dirt-caked hands. It's my job to remember you that way. Under the same old stars, where we gathered green oak leaves like currency in summer and cooked Chinese food on them with acorn seasonings. And we get home late enough that the windows were shut to keep out the heat and muffle the cicadas' constant whir. Like chalked putty to a soft, dark brook, we rode deep into every night. We could never be exhausted. Every catch in our breath made our lungs sore from laughing. About 2 years ago, I lost you, and I haven't cried since. Ode to TV. Dull, hot Sunday morning, the year 2036. Joe and I were in the mud, baking lines with rotten sticks. Played tic-tac-toe, played rodeo. I'm tired, Jack, said Joe. The feeling was mutual, so we tolled around. Back to the shade home. Let the sun scorch the ground. We turn on the power. Mr. TV sang. Mrs. Lampshade lit the room. The tinsel washer rang, and the hot dull day shed its gloom. So many years would pass, where Jack went up to bed. But Joe would stay awake with TV dreams in his head. And yes, our parents had those stories about the greener things, but they've been mostly forgotten, how the fucking TV sings. And still today, I remember that yellow poached mud, drawing channels in the dirt that must have felt so good. I made a friend at college, very interesting lady. Her name is Ritza. She's this, I don't know where I found her. I think she's a stalker. But she's this sassy Creole lady, and she's in her early 40s. And it's really important to her that I learn the French language. And she's always trying to teach me how Haitians speak French. I remember one day driving her home. Well, I wasn't driving, but we were driving back on the I-91, and I said déjà vu, mostly because we've driven her home like 100 times, because she's attached to us. And she was very concerned. She tells me, it's not déjà vu, it's déjà vu. It's déjà vu. And so this one's for Ritza, who is just, in her own subtle way, wise. Just, making me aware of how to use my words better. So this is for her. It's called Déjà Vu Ritza. You got that chocolate laughter, Haitian hair, the locking dread. That stubborn gait, one you pray that I get into because I'm not a Christian bred. That sing-song sob, your twittering French, a song you say is nearly dead. That déjà vu's not déjà vu, it's really déjà vu. You sing and sing the word retread. It's already seen, you see. I don't claim to come from Haiti, with R that rolls on tongue a sled. That beat your heart remembers, a land to which your heart is wed. That tiny place with roaring gospel ringing in your father's stead. That sunken sun in milk papaya, jewel in purple sky in bed. That déjà vu's not déjà vu, it's really déjà vu. America's indeed misled. It's already seen, you see. And for my last poem, I'm going to read something I wrote called It's About Damn Time. And sometimes I like to forget about people when I write poems, despite everything I've said. I like to just dress them up as people, put them in people clothes and make them drink and dance and fall in love and do stupid things. So, this is my experiment. It's about damn time. I wrote a poem for myself and not for you. You like enjambment and opaqueness? Too bad. This one's all for me. This poem is a little loose, but she won't let you take her so easily. You will see her winding down in a purloin of melted syrup on a couch at the local church. She's in a production of The Sound of Music, knocking back a couple of beers backstage with her friends, laughing too much, making dust dance. Not before she's had her fourth drink will you start cuckooing, wrapping her up in thin, fleecy compliments, touching her clement forehead. But she knows these advances. She hears the director silently screaming her cues, and she slips out of your arms just in time. But you are nice. You're going to stay and watch the whole show. You attend the carousal afterwards and dissect her performance. You will ask her what her character's motivations were until it's maybe midnight, and everyone's left behind that stale perfume and the bargain confetti into her. You will take her back to your place until your sex is sated, until you get every last kick out of her childish grin. You, like a thief in the night, will be gone in the morning. I doubt you will return her calls. You won't send her a line. You will have asked all of the right questions, and you felt great afterwards. It is only natural you will teach others how to feel great too. I write this poem so you can't take her. Thanks. And next up is Julia Bonadies, student at Manchester Community College and a really great poet.
Hello. So as Ben mentioned, I'm a sophomore at MCC. I'm an elementary ed major, so my first poem, fittingly, is about kids. I work at a daycare, and it's essentially about all the kids I've ever met or witnessed who seem to have lived longer lives than me. So it's called Aubrey. When her parents dropped her off, she'd hang up her purple jacket, and secondhand smoke followed her like chalk dust. Her head was shaved because of the lice she'd gotten earlier in the year, but it was growing back in the chestnut brown peach fuzz phase. She had had her ears pierced since she was 2 months old. Little gold hoops like a pirate whose words could chop your hand off with the scissors she hid underneath her tongue. Her eyelashes were always shedding, like the tears you never caught her crying. She looked like a tiny Buddhist monk in her black chucks, with what seemed like Tibetan mantras scribbled all over them in the pen kindergartners are never allowed to use. You wanted to ask her questions, just because you knew she'd seen more than you, knew she held more knowledge in her crumpled fist, than the teachers trying to warn her about the life she was already living. So this next poem is called Saved, and it's an epigraph poem, so it starts with a quote by Ruby Carr that says, "Is it love, even if they don't know how to love themselves?" So it's called Saved. By the middle of the summer, it was a forest teeming with my untamed thoughts. Buzzing from the ground up with the heat we found ourselves caught in. You split my jaw open with your jackknife tongue, but I cracked myself wider to suck your poisonous past from you like lethal venom. His body was a wound I bandaged with my lips. We are foreigners to gentle kisses, bought and traded like penny candy. It was the Last Supper every time we touched. This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. We laid our words like palms underneath each other's feet, anointed our foreheads with tree sap. Canopies of pine needles were our sanctuary. Rolled the stones away from our hearts, resurrected our trust and breathed life into dry bones. Gave ourselves hope and called ourselves holy. This next poem is called To Be Honest, and for me to sum it up, it's about grace and redemption. So it's called To Be Honest. I'm still a little bit drunk when I hear imagination clinking in the form of Star Wars Lego parts from my little brother's bedroom. I crack the door open a few inches and see those parts shaping and reshaping into things I no longer recognize. I squat in the doorway and talk to this 11-year-old creature with bedhead and glasses as he mumbles replies. I wish I were him, just a little drunk off dreams, unaware of potential, and starving for adventures that start where wonder begins. I wish I could shrink my mind back down to being small, while still believing in its own bigness. He's always asked more questions than any kid I've ever known. But somehow, I still think he's a prophet in pajamas. And if you look closely, you can see God twinkling in his eyes, laughing at my tiny reflection as he waves, almost to say, "This is where I've been all along. You just haven't looked for me in a while." This next poem that I'm going to read is for and about one of my friends who was considering suicide. So it's called The Night He Almost Left. He had moonbeams in his eyes, but he cried stars. The creation of crooked constellations spread down his face. He called me, whispering jumbled thoughts that said, "Help me." I reached for the life he took into his own hands, refusing to let him drown in backhand betrayal. His family set fire to his trust and left him for ashes on their own front porch. But they never expected resurrection when cots and couches are the only thing holding him at night. Boy broken into a man, abandonment never made a good parent anyways. So he finished raising himself on secondhand love and handmade help. He travels light. The only things he keeps are the paper promises he makes to himself. This next poem is entitled Midnight, and it's about a married couple, and it's also a persona poem, so the I in the story is from the male's point of view as the narrator. It's called Midnight. I feel the gentle question mark of my wife's finger as it wakes me in the pitch dark. I mumble a reply and turn to see her gray eyes wide, like two waning gibbous moons afraid to be at full. She tells me it might be something, and it could be nothing, but she is too much of everything for me to lose anything. So I steady my shaking hand, slip it underneath her well-worn t-shirt, and cup her breasts like a ripe grapefruit. Rub my thumb along the white surface, past freckles and faded bite marks from 3 hungry mouths, and there it is waiting for me. Something that could be nothing, that doesn't deserve to have a place there, lodged like an obstinate pebble, refusing to be weathered away, is the half-life no one would wish on their enemy. Alright, so this last poem holds a special place in my heart. I know like choosing a favorite poem is kind of like choosing a favorite child, so I can never truly do that, but this poem does have a very special place in my heart, and it's also an epigraph poem. So it starts with a quote by Anis Moganji that says, "How thick and heavy the night was. It hung in the oak trees. How the stars were so close they left bruises. How there was so much light in me." It's called 8-14-15. I could count on 2 hands all the shooting stars I saw that night. Beginnings and endings collided. It was like being frozen in a slow-motion meteor shower. Resting in the shoulder of the Milky Way, we lay in cold grass and gazed at its spine stretching out in the hazy night sky above us. We traced it with our pupils until we lost it in the burnt orange light pollution. But when we spied on stars through telescopes, our field of vision made the night appear to be the hole in the middle of a piece of black construction paper. Our dark minds illuminated by a single light. Humbled by our insignificance, we accepted our role as spectators of the Creator's beauty. We found comfort existing on the outskirts of millions of miles as we watched the stars creeping across the scope, matching the speed the Earth was spinning us to. Thank you. And next up, we have Valerie Zapata, who is a senior at UHeart. She is a double major in English and sociology, and she is originally from Peru.
The view is so much different from here. Okay, so my first poem is called Waiting Room. It's one about mortality. I feel like when we're young, in general, we don't really think about dying. And if we really, and even if we think about dying, we don't think it's coming soon. And I put myself in the perspective of someone who I saw in a waiting room. And I sort of realized that kind of like the worst part of knowing that you're gonna die is knowing that you have to kind of wait for it. So in all, we're all kind of in this waiting room because we don't know when we're gonna die. So waiting room. He was headed my way, pushing his bright metallic blue walker. One of his legs drooped as he dragged it. He looked at me. I saw something in his eyes, a tiny particle, like dust, from underneath my living room couch. I could taste it, emerging blood in my mouth. He was an endangered species. We all are, the sick, the damaged, and me. He began to speak. I couldn't hear. I gazed at his lips, white and peeling. I was rigid as a syringe, saying hello and how are you, but I could feel myself moldering in my seat, afraid for my own discoloring skin, dissolving day to day. I went home, wondering if I brought him sadness, if my empathy overwhelmed him, or if he smelled the stench of dying in me. Somehow I felt unanswered and unfinished, uncertain if I'll ever be ready to die. This next poem is called Enabler. It's, I guess because I'm a sociology major, I kind of want to put myself in other people's perspectives. So sometimes little things that we do, even if we don't think that they affect other people, they do. And in this particular poem, I felt like I was doing the right thing, and it ended up being the worst thing for the other person. And it just made me notice how what I do plays a big role. So, Enabler. Red light. She approached my car window, her voice scattered like lice munching on a juicy scalp. My daughter just died. Do you have any money? Por favor, mamita, I need help. Her words took flight, glazed by guys and her thick, miserable powder. Por favor, mamita. She used my color like she wore her skin. Wet lips glistened, her breath fogged my body, smothered me like a plug. Inside her mouth, an infestation, fat piling worms, eyes like bullets aimed at my wallet. I should have known. I gave her $3 and all of my change. I watched her go from my rear view. This next poem, it's called Our First Apartment. It's more of a sentimental kind of poem. It's one where I talk about my family. Like Julia said, I'm from Peru, and the first time when I came here, I lived with my family in one apartment. We had one room for the four of us, and it's kind of sweet knowing that you have your family there by your side. And it's kind of sweet knowing that if I needed them, they were going to be right there. And like thinking back on it, like when you grow up or when you get older, you move away or you do different things and you separate. And thinking back on this first apartment, just it's kind of nostalgic for me. And our first apartment. We left an island, white walls, a single mattress, and 2 sets of wooden chairs. My parents worked like ants, carrying piece by piece on their backs to our home, to our mouths. My brother, a second father, raised me like cement bears a home. When he was gone, the room spoke. Te amamos. Nights waited for our laughter to dwindle. Huddled, we made room on the edges of the bed. We were packed, bodies inside a cereal bag. In a swoop, time changed into today. The moon disappeared. I opened my eyes, not even peeling wallpapers remained. Who knew our smiles were like cracks on sidewalks? 4 in a mattress dissolved into 3 bedrooms, till closed doors became us. This next poem, sometimes I hate reading this poem because it's unavoidable, really. As writers or as anyone in general, when we get hurt, we tend to write about it, or we tend to talk about it, or we cry about it. And this is a poem about hurt, about someone who hurt me. But one thing that I do look forward when I speak about this poem is the fact that I grew as a writer, because this poem wasn't at all the way that it's written now. And when I look at it, I'm like, it has more to go, and I have more to go. Overcast. When I think I've forgotten the past, an overwhelming chill storms from sudden reminders. They pluck me back into that uncomfortable chair, where his voice trickled down my spine like aluminum strips, holding tightly to his dissipating hands, bruising me with hollow fervor that plummets every time. When I think I've forgotten, the past relies on this moment, the words that have stuck to me like wet sand. All dried up now, they start to moisten, till I feel him tracing me a carapace. Too serious, he says, and then I argue with silence. When I think I've forgotten, the past blows images in my direction, and I eat them whole. So, I've noticed with this poem and then with the last poem, I kind of have an obsession with eating things. I really do. I think about eating and I think about writing about eating. I don't know why. I like food. This last poem is called I Eat It All. And it's not just about eating. It's kind of more about like taking it all in. I feel like I'm that person that people will treat me badly and I won't say anything. I'll just let it happen. And I'll be like, okay, everything's okay. But I do it in my writing. When I'm upset and I hate somebody, I just write it. And it's become one of my favorite poems, so I eat it all. The world flips without notice. All you have are pebbles, infinitesimal strikes. Words spiral towards you. They hurt like tacks in a bulletin board. Fluids rush to the top of your head till they dye you dark red. Like a starless sky leaves the moon desolate. Sorry. You start to hate everything, even puppies with their nonsense. Why don't they behave? Or the fish with their relentless staring. What do they want? What do they all want? The only way to stop it, grab a giant piece of your trying, ram it down your esophagus till it moistens like damp newspaper. Eat. Eat it all. For the empty chair, for the lone toothbrush, for the tree which has no mouth. And that's it. So the last reader is obviously your very own Angela Pritzwolaski. I'm sorry. Her last name is so hard. So if you don't already know, she's a senior. She's a double major in English, concentration in creative writing, and political science, and concentration in American government. And an interesting thing about her is when she leaves, she wants to move to New York.
Hello. Wow, I've been to a lot of readings where I'm sitting there and not here. So I want to thank the English department. You guys are the best. Can we give a round of applause to the English department? I was really thinking about not doing that, and I was like, I have to. My first poem is a poem Professor Barry made me write in his his workshop, and he said, write about an old article of clothing in your closet that you used to love, but for some reason or another, it just sits there. You don't wear it anymore. So I wrote this poem. It's called Chainmail. The hoodie perched in my closet knows the cold of school days when icy hallway eyes nipped at my face. Her metallic gold letters shielded my left side, melting stares downward as they tried to read. Now she's filed between packaged prom dresses, crafted for expiration after the first flash. Chiffon over the tool that scored my legs when I sat at the dinner table for too long. When you look at her back, connect the pills, find handprints, backpack straps, and maybe Orion. Read the letters that are now bronze-tinted plastic, crusted over purple fabric, the tombstone of my middle school self. Look for graphite outlines on the sleeves' wrists, the silhouette of water washing onto shore, made from sweeping over freshly written words. Listen to the sound of the zipper emulate 100 papers I ripped in frustration. She's the bravery I wished for when I was 12, 14, and 20. This next one is an instructional poem, and it taught me that if you're going to buy goldfish, you should buy a filter. It's called How to Dispose of Your Dead Goldfish. Leave the room where the body floats like a shedding petal from a cherry tree. Hide in the bathroom with your best friend as you decide what to do. He's the Medusa's head. Don't look in his eyes or the water around him. Pretend you never saw his murky pupils and sloughed skin. Walk into the room backwards while her screaming voice blurs your internal map. Be brave. Now be braver. You're alone. Net the carcass in your hand and forget his name. Run your thumb along his inflated side, but don't press down. His ribbon guts might pop out on your black linen trousers. Balance him on your fingertips while looking up to the sky. Find your way using peripheral vision. Pretend down doesn't exist. 3 bodies collect in the bathroom. Now build a wall of fingers between him and your best friend. Listen to her sigh as he slips like a marble down a chute towards his last tank. Take your friend by the hand into the living room and drink until the posters on the walls are white. Okay. This next one is also a prompt by Professor Berry. All of these poems were basically supervised by Professor Berry. And he said, write about something in your life that you have a memory attached to, like an object from your childhood, and that you may have a positive or a negative memory attached to. And this one is negative because I really hated brushing my hair, and I would end up with these big knots, and they were just awful. And it's called The Green Comb. Oh, and for context, I lived in Greece for about 7 years of my life, so the poem is set in Greece. The Green Comb. My mother sets me free when I run in Greek air, or when I try on my big sister's clothes. She smiles a black and white smile. But now she is behind my back, untangling the knots that transform lines into curves and question marks. Sit up straight, my mouth is shut. Straight teeth bite into patches of matted hair. I yelp and shriek as my mom robs me of my knots. They are mine, I made them. Badges and ribbons for my hard play, surprise trophies handed to me through my adventures. I crawl between static branches in blanket tunnels. As I tumble away from clawed pillowcase hand, my hair lumps together like a tight hug. I make bike tires buzz and the wind snatches my hair back like a bad friend. Mother Nature's tied these knots yesterday. They want to grow with me. My birth mother chops through laced hair, and I feel myself getting smaller. But at the end of the tears and thoughts of how much dirt tumbles through wired hair, I know I'll get a bow. Okay. So this next one, you guys don't have these here in America, but in Greece there's like these butcheries, and they just have dead meat hanging in the window everywhere. It's like the bigger the dead meat in the window, like the more I guess people want to buy dead meat. I don't know what the logic behind that is, but the poem is inspired by me visiting these butcheries. It's called Who Holds the Knife? Fingers fill the gap between pig ribs. The cleaver smacks the wood block as the butcher's son lays his hand against bone when he chops. But instead of a knife, I hear gunshots from the man dressed in black in an old Western film who only took 9 steps. The big hat falls from his head. Glass words shatter with the shot. I feel the blood from my chest pooling at my feet, rising to my knees, and around me, the dismembered cow tongues, pig ears, and lamb feet float in the butchery, while the slayer and his son cackle with sharpened teeth. I open my eyes, ringing at the bottom of my shirt, as I walk towards braided, muscled bodies, skinless and suspended behind the glass. Steadily, I exhale, the ice and blood around me. I look at the bare lamb's face and think, did it know that the hand that feeds it slits its throat? And I wonder if the sets of hands that hold me up today will dismember me tomorrow, and then tightly clasp each other as they watch me bleed out. Okay. So this one is based on a pet canary that I used to have that I saved in a dramatic turn of events of me saving a canary. It's called The Domestic Canary. His eyes are dark slits surrounded by minuscule feathers, birdie eyelashes. His chest puffs in and out like a fireplace bellows as you rest your thumb on his wings. Your eyes are now sealed envelopes. Within them, the canary flies, parkouring off walls like a spy, until he perches above you on the gold fishhook chandelier, his home base, gapped beak panting because you left the birdcage open, accidentally, of course. Now, holding a plastic pipette of medicinal water, your fingernail divides his beak and dribbles 5 drops in, whoops 6, 1 for good measure. His pale blue birdcage, with windows, a fireplace, and a front door, is built to look like a house. In your palms, you're holding a sick bird, as brittle as a dried-out baby's breath. Yours because your dad loves hearing canary songs, but he's never home. So like a seashell, you keep the songs in your ear canals. You whisper, "Stay," and we can whistle. All right. So my last poem is based on what I imagine my mom was like when she was young. My mom, I know she was like really pretty, like too pretty for my dad, but I always like to think about what she was like as a kid. So it's called 1980. At 16, she wore the clothes in the magazines. Her slender finger slipped across shiny pages until cascading cloth and straight stitches filled her eyes. Her mother, my grandmother, sewed her the blue model's dress, and it dusted her ankles, but when the wind blew, the fabric framed her skinny thighs. She passed by the girls her age holding flowers as she walked home from the butcher, carrying a parcel crossed with white string, filled with animal organs for her family's soup. Her cheeks, cut perfectly like glass, made rusty necks turn back towards her. Once, a stranger asked to take her picture to put in his photo store window. She looked at him and shook the word no. So when she tells me I am beautiful in the clothes I wear, I smile with the corners of my mouth stretched tight. I am no one's muse, but my mother still keeps a picture of me in her windowsill.